I'll now introduce Jon Dugdale, who's CEO of Golden Deeps.
So, Golden Deeps, ASX listed company, been around for quite a while. A couple of weeks ago, market cap of around 7 million and less than 2 million in the bank. This morning, market cap of around 30 million and another $7 million heading towards the bank. So, a good story at the moment, and I'm getting some sleep. Primarily focused on battery metals projects. These are polymetallic deposits, principally in Namibia. Short-term vanadium. I'd like to thank Vince and the other speakers of helping to educate the audience on what vanadium is all about. But longer term, we're really focusing on copper from an exploration point of view. So our key projects are in Namibia, as I mentioned, in what I call the Atavi copper belt. It's essentially the same belt of rocks as the Kalahari copper belt to the south, where Sandfire are drilling up, or have got some major deposits in the development stage over in the Botswana side. So we've essentially got the same rocks, but that's a world-class environment in its own right. Past production from the Tsumeb mine, for instance, 30 million tonnes at 4.3% copper, 10% lead and 3.5% zinc, and not to mention the vanadium that went along with it. Our key projects are all brownfields projects, essentially with some mining in all of them previously. Abinab was the world's highest grade vanadium mine, interestingly enough, when vanadium had nothing to do with batteries. Nosub is a new discovery of copper with vanadium, lead and silver at surface, and then it becomes a copper-silver ore body at depth. And Kusub Springs only really closed recently. It was quite a late discovery in the field. Produced 300,000 tonnes at a magnificent grade of 10% copper and 584 grams per tonne silver, and we think we know where the next one is. And we'll be drilling that soon, now that we've got some money. We also have projects in Australia, in the Lock and Fold belt. We could well be on to a new discovery of copper at our Havilar project, which I'll mention a bit later, and we've got cobalt silver in Canada. So high grades, some of the best battery metals around, including vanadium, and I'll talk a bit more in detail. Right, so focusing on those Namibian projects. They're all sitting in a tenement that covers about a 25 kilometre by a couple of kilometres east, north-south. The Abinab mine on the eastern side and the Kusub Springs mine down here are both hosted by carbonate rocks that sort of fold around this sequence. Nosub is in the basal conglomerate arenites and is more of a strata-bound type deposit. At Nosub, we've got a new discovery essentially there, and it outcrops at surface. So the intersection we released on Monday, actually, 53 metres at 3.6% copper equivalent, is from surface. And it's quite amazing that these things are still sitting there unmined. There was some historical mining, but that was only on narrow veins, essentially. Abinab, previously the world's highest grade vanadium mine, and we've got a new resource there it's quite significant, very high grade, and we're looking to move that through to completion of processing studies and into feasibility to get at least that early stage of production from the shallow deposits for vanadium and some of the other base metals moving in the short term. And then we have the exploration focus on Kusub Springs and some of the other deeper targets. So what's Nosub all about? As I said, it's an outcropping deposit, a little bit of historical development, really only looked at narrow copper lenses within the deposit. We've come in with an RC program, then followed it up with a diamond drilling program, which has only recently been completed. And you can see some of the intersections there. The one we announced on Monday was the 53 metres at 1.15% copper, 0.6% vanadium pentoxide, 3.5% lead, 4.6% gram per tonne silver, a couple of other elements that I couldn't fit on the slide. So it truly is polymetallic with some very high grade intervals within it. Previous intersections of similar tenor, but didn't quite attract the same attention that this one did. And that's basically going from surface through the entire arenite unit and also intersecting the sulphide mineralisation at the base, where you've got 10.6 metres at 0.75% copper. So that's a long-term exploration target. But we've essentially drilled this shallow deposit, and we're now going to move into a resource estimation stage, do some open pit optimisation. We're doing some metallurgical testing. We're going to fast track that work so we can bring it up to the same stage as the Abinab project, which I'll talk about in a moment. And that's all about gravity concentration. Gravity concentration, these ores are an unusual mineralogy. This is a sample from Abinab. It's disclosite. It's a vanadium, lead, zinc hydroxide effectively, formed in the upper parts of these systems. They're actually a supergene overprint on top of a primary sulfide ore body, and they can get to very good grade. They're also a piece of cake to process, and you can get that up to sort of 20 or 30% concentrate grade of vanadium with the other base metals. And it's very heavy. I have been known to throw things at the audience to keep them awake, but that was when I was dealing with graphite samples. I won't be throwing this at you. You can relax. Abinab. So historical mine, you can see the production areas from surface coming down to the centre of that ore body. It's like a breccia pipe, primarily a lead zinc sulfide deposit in the carbonates, but then you get this overprint of vanadium and enriched lead moving into these fault structures, which are essentially normal faults. It's a complete supergene overprint. Once you get into the primary zone, there's very little vanadium. But that was a ripper of a mine when vanadium wasn't really worth quite as much as it is now. Produced 176,000 tonnes of concentrate at 16% vanadium and over 50% lead. And we think we can get this resource up to the same sort of concentrate grades. This is our resource, 2.8 million tonnes at 0.66% vanadium pentoxide, 2.35% lead, nearly 1% zinc at a 0.2% cutoff. Up until the rise in the vanadium price, I probably would have focused more on the higher grade cutoff, but that's probably going to be the cutoff we'll be able to apply. We've done mining studies that indicate that it mines very well, quite cheap, large scale stopes. We've done gravity concentrate studies, building on some of the previous work that says we can get up to that 21% vanadium pentoxide concentrate with the lead and the zinc coming along for the ride. We're now doing another stage of work on this with samples representative of the resource. There was some more recent drilling done in 2019, which hasn't been put into a resource update yet. We'll do that after we've done this further work. That's gravity concentration work. See if we can repeat this sort of level of concentrate grade. But in parallel with that, we're doing downstream hydrometallurgical leach work. And we've been able to show that we can get up to 95.4% of the vanadium into acid solution with the zinc. The lead drops out as a sulfate product, which can be sold, and then we can precipitate the vanadium and the zinc and further process it to get these downstream products as far as we want to go. The first product is probably what's called a red cake, which is about the colour of this slide. So that's a product that can then be sold, or working with others, processed downstream to produce vanadium pentoxide. It's a small-scale, high-grade production focus. These resources, including Abinab and what we'll put on the books at Nosib, are very close to surface, both easy to mine, both easy to process, and we'll be able to produce something that in the near term, once we complete feasibility studies, that'll satisfy the demands of what is quite a big market. That's a little bit more detail. I'll leave you to read that, but there's a picture of the disclosite we're talking about. I guess the key here is that we're going to continue advancing the studies on Abinab. We'll bring the studies on Nosib up to the same level, where we've got resources, we've got indicated resources we can turn into reserves, we've got the metallurgical test work, then turn that into an integrated scoping, then feasibility study, and advance those projects to mining leases and look for near-term production. And all the commodities we're looking at have got a very good price trajectory at the moment. Now the exciting stuff. Exploration. Coosa Springs is a magnificent, small but very high-grade ore body. I call it the silver swan of copper. I was there with Peter Harold at MPI when we found that very high-grade nickel deposit, and this is about the same size. The difference here is they've only mined it down to 300 metres, and this normal fault has probably just offset it down here somewhere, and I think some of that previous drilling has intersected maybe the top of it and might be plunging off towards you guys. We will now be drill targeting that for a repeat of that deposit, and we're really only talking about relatively shallow depth, given the grade of what we're looking at. And that decline is intact. That was only closed in 2005. So this is an outstanding opportunity to find something of exceptional grade and exceptional value. And that drilling will be kicking off as soon as we can get the drilling rigs organised and finish the preliminary work. We'll also be targeting deeper strata-bound copper-silver deposits in Nosib. We already know it's about 45 metres thick at up to 1% copper, with silver up to 20 or 30 grams per tonne. It's not as high grade as Kusib Springs, but it's much thicker, so that might be a bulk mining type target as well. So that's going to be a parallel stage to moving the development studies. We'll be moving the exploration story forward at the same time. Moving on to New South Wales. So we've got projects in central New South Wales within the Lachlan Fold Belt. Obviously, exciting country to be working in, Cadia Ridgeway being the standout. We're effectively on the next belt to the east of the Cadia Ridgeway arc, I guess. We're in the Rockley Goolgong arc. We have a deposit, a prospect here at Havilar, which I'll show in a bit more detail. So we've got copper anomalism all around the northeast margin of this intrusive, which looks like it's feeding a lot of the other deposits in the area. There's a Mount Pleasant Molly porphyry deposit over here to the west. We've got extensive copper anomalism on the northeast margin. We've just generated quite an extensive soil anomaly. We've gone to the field, we've found outcropping copper mineralisation, never been drilled, quite remarkable. And we're now extending and infilling that sampling work. It's quite an extensive anomaly, already 1.5 kilometres long and at least half a kilometre across. Looks like it's disseminated mineralisation turned to malachite at surface. We'll do some more sampling, we'll do some more rock chip sampling, and then we'll do some geophysics. We know the IP induced polarisation works very well up here, and then we'll be looking to drill that in the short term as well. We could be on top of another discovery. So why invest? We've got high grade of the very best commodities. Copper, obviously, vanadium, similar price trajectory to nickel, essentially, and growing demand, as Vince Algo and the others have talked about in terms of redox flow batteries. We've got an opportunity with our high-grade deposits that are near surface to move these things rapidly into development and production, but in parallel, grow the resource base and do more exploration at the same time. We may have a potential new copper discovery in the Lachlan Fold Belt as well, and we've got a management team with a strong track record of brownfields discovery in these sorts of environments. Thank you very much.